What's going on, everybody? Dr. Andrew Fix back for another episode on the Code. Again, as you know, I'm with Physio Room, performance-based rehab facility here in Denver. And I just really appreciate you guys being on here and listening to this. I think we've got another awesome interview lined up for you guys to check out today. I'm with a new friend of mine, Evan Ritt, with a new shoe company called Tolos. And Evan, I'm super excited to have you on here, man. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Absolutely. My pleasure. Very brief amount of context for you guys that are listening to this. Those of you that know me, we've had some other minimalist barefoot style shoe company representatives on this podcast before. I'm a big fan of those types of shoes. In my opinion, that's the only type of shoe there really should be, because a lot of the other shoes out there, they really do some crazy things to our feet. But I was participating in a yoga class a few weeks back, and had a really awesome experience with the instructor. Started talking to her afterwards about the shoes that I was wearing, and she really liked them. And she said, "Hey, you need to talk to my friend Evan, because he's starting a shoe brand very similar to this, and I think you would really like those shoes." So a couple weeks go past. Here we are recording an episode on the Code. So Evan, would you do me a favor? And, I know a little bit about your background from our last conversation, but would you share a little bit with the listeners, like who you are, where you came from, and how we got to having this conversation?
Absolutely. So my name is Evan Ritt. I'm from Lakewood, Colorado. I grew up here, and I was a hockey player. I played since I was a young age. And then I was pretty good. I wasn't a top tier blue chip recruit, but I was always a pretty good player. And ended up playing in college. I played here at the University of Denver, which is one of the top college programs. And
The
so
champs.
that was, yeah, exactly. It was an amazing experience. Just being around such elite people and elite kids at that age to be my friends and my teammates pushing me. And then my senior year, we won a national championship. That was a huge year for me, just personally. Just to be a part of a team that won and to see what that culture was like. It shaped me and taught me a lot about how to live a life and be a good person. And ultimately, a lot of the things that Tolos is and represents are derivations from what I learned from that. So I would love to get into a lot of that stuff too.
For sure.
And that I went and played. I was able to play a couple of years after. I played a year in France and then a year in England. And in that time, I just got really interested in my own health and was simultaneously getting a ton of injuries. My body basically fell apart at the end of my hockey career. Mm-hmm. And so while I'm learning about health, I start experimenting on myself, and I started to learn about things, and I heard about barefoot shoes. And I love health, and I love sort of the holistic spectrum of health. Mm-hmm. And I was never really a sneakerhead or like anybody that was that interested, but I just found that there weren't good barefoot shoes, in my opinion. There was a lot of options, but they were just coming up short. And so I sat in this market for years, wishing that there was a really good barefoot shoe, especially one that was made for athletes, performance-wise and then looks-wise too. And eventually I just decided that the direction of each of the companies that were currently in the market, that they weren't going to get where I wanted to get. And so I felt like somebody was going to do it right, but nobody was going to do it like me. And so I wanted to just start. And so we're launching in December. I have the shoe here. This is our first shoe right here. And you can see it's just a very simple design. And what makes a barefoot shoe is the wide toe box that's anatomically correct, where the big toe is the highest point of the shoe, where most non-barefoot shoes come to a point in the middle. Mm-hmm. It's flat, zero drop, which actually I'm sure a lot of your audience already knows a lot of this. And then lastly, it's thin and flexible, so it moves anatomically. So I just tried to make a cool shoe that had those features.
No, I think that's great. And like you said, hopefully most of the audience, especially if they've listened to some of the previous episodes, they totally understand what you're saying. However, hopefully there are also people listening to this that this might open their eyes a little bit to what we're talking about. When was it, Evan, that started this kind of path or journey to, like, when did you change your footwear and start getting more into this barefoot style approach for yourself and wearing them?
Yeah, so I've been almost exclusively barefoot for the last 3.5, 4 years, probably.
Hmm.
My first pair in college, my trainer, Matt Shaw, he got us at school, you get a bunch of workout equipment, like clothes, and he got us a pair of New Balance Minimus. So
Yeah.
that was probably 2013. And it was funny, all of the guys, we all talked about how they're the most comfortable shoes ever. Everybody was obsessed with the shoes, but they just looked ugly. They
Yeah.
were an all black trail shoe. So nobody really took it seriously.
Hmm.
And then after I graduated in 2017, and I was in France and really getting into the health stuff, and I started to learn about the barefoot shoes,
Yeah.
it sort of clicked. It was like, oh, that's what those shoes were. They were just a wide toe box and a thin, flexible sole. It
Yeah.
just didn't look that good.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that point that you bring up is an interesting and important one. This kind of intersection or crossing of aesthetics and performance, or aesthetics and the look and the function of the shoe. Because I would totally agree with you, and that sometimes is one of the barriers that I encounter when I'm trying to encourage clients of mine or friends or family or whatnot to start to move more towards this style of footwear. Is I feel like they understand the function and the rationale and what I'm trying to explain to them, and they feel the difference, quite frankly. However, they don't like the way that a lot of them look. And we were just actually having a conversation out here in the gym a few days ago with one of the clients who has now purchased 2 different brands worth of these shoes. He likes the way the ones look better, but he likes the way the other ones feel and perform better. And he's like, but ultimately, I don't like the way any of them look compared to some of the more, popular shoe brands out there in the market, the Nikes and the whatever. So I think trying to mesh those two things together is really important, because I think that is going to be one of the ways that we can start to really spread this message to more and more and more people. And
Exactly.
to give just a little bit of a background on, these types of shoes haven't been around forever, right? Obviously humans evolved not having footwear. And then the first types of footwear that humans had were just things that were meant to protect their feet from the cold, in the heat, in the terrain, right? And, it's just like little sandals of, like, basically nothing there, just something to protect your foot. And then what I remember hearing on one of my last interviews was one of the reasons that we started developing shoes that had more of a thick heel on them was because we were riding horses, and that thick heel relative to the front of the foot helped the foot stay locked in the stirrup a little bit better, because the stirrup blocked by the heel of the shoe. And then that's the way we just started making shoes. Maybe narrower shoes look a little bit more visually pleasing. Wider shoes maybe don't look as nice, but these are the only types of shoes that I wear now. And I can't even put on some of my dress shoes that I used to wear, or athletic shoes that I used to wear, because my foot is so uncomfortable when I put those on now. Like, I was playing softball this spring, summer, and fall, and I was wearing a pair of football cleats that I've had for like 5 years. And those shoes at the time, when I bought them, they didn't feel too narrow, but my gosh, they feel so narrow and uncomfortable now, because I've been wearing these types of shoes basically exclusively for the past handful of years. So I'm totally on board with the message that you're sharing and the information that you've got here. So
Yeah,
I just commend you for bringing another option for people into the market, trying to mesh that intersection of performance and looks, because that'll get a lot of people interested.
exactly. And to circle back on that, there's a couple things I wanted to sort of expand on there. But so your first point was how you're talking to clients right now and you're discussing the benefits with them, and they can connect with the performance benefits, how it may help them live healthier lives.
Yeah,
But there's this barrier to entry.
for sure.
And a lot of times when I talk about, I want to make a good looking barefoot shoe, part of that message feels like it's coming from a vain place. I want to make a good stylish shoe, but really where it's coming from. I mean, obviously I want a cool looking shoe, but sorry, excuse me.
No, you're good.
But like you were talking about, what I'm trying to do with this is lower as many barriers to entry as possible so that people will just put them on their feet, because I think this is one of the biggest health issues in the world, for people who are wearing shoes like this in developed countries where people have shoes like this. You don't see, I've heard Stephen Sashin, who was on this podcast before, I've heard him quoted a bunch that you don't see a lot of podiatrists in like third world countries. And, but to get back to the point, if there's a lot of people who have been following along with me, and they're saying, if you can execute this, I'm all aboard, but I'm just not willing to try yet. And a lot of people so far are. I mean, one of the main inspirations looks wise was an Adidas Ultra Boost, and you can kind of see that in the this sock top around here, just to have a shoe that you can wear casually with athleisure. My goal is that the more time you spend in this shoe, it's going to be the better for you. So if I can make this as applicable to as many situations as possible, then it's going to have the maximum positive impact. And then the next thing you're talking about was putting on these old shoes and cleats. That's an area that needs a lot of disruption too. But yeah, it's funny how that happens. How once your foot feels a shoe like this, you go from this place of you don't recognize that there's this issue going on, and then your foot feels this, and then it's almost impossible to go back. You feel claustrophobic, and you just can't perform this, and your foot feels like it's locked in this position. So
for sure. And that's been the biggest thing for me, is like, I can't go back because I know the benefits of staying in this type of a shoe, or like even right this minute, I'm not even wearing shoes right now. You know, I don't even have them on, but
that's another thing with this is a tagline is that I don't even want you to wear this. I only want you to wear this when you have to. So
yeah, exactly. When you need to protect your foot from something.
Exactly.
But yeah, it's like so many people can probably relate to, if you're used to, you know, think of like a successful entrepreneurial or professional business woman, typically, right? Someone that you might picture wearing a business suit, a dress, high-heeled shoes that are super narrow, tall heel. They crunch your foot in there. They squeeze your toes in there. What one of those ladies doesn't look forward to when they sit down at their desk in their private office, or they get back to their house, taking off those shoes, right? And they just kind of rub their feet and they feel their feet and they're like, oh, it feels so good to get out of these shoes. If that's you, whether you're one of those people wearing the high heels or just like whatever shoes you're wearing, if you are really looking forward to and excited to take those things off, that's probably an indication that that shoe is not best serving your foot. And Evan already alluded to the fact that a lot of the foot issues, the plantar fasciitis, the bunions, the whatever, neuromas, the things that a lot of people in this country and a lot of developed countries around the world deal with in terms of like foot dysfunction, are not nearly as prevalent in a lot of the countries that don't have the same type of footwear as we do, in the same type of lifestyle as we do. So, you know, I don't think that that's a coincidence. I think that is a, you know, if it's like a nature versus nurture thing, it's the environment that we put ourselves in. The environment that we put our foot in creates the opportunity for those things to arise and to happen. And if we can start to get back in touch with the way that we evolved using footwear like this, we can start to mitigate and decrease the prevalence of a lot of those things over time.
I totally agree. I think that's my goal, is that people can just start to try some of these shoes, get your foot in a wide toe box shoe. And that's another area that barrier that I was trying to address. Is I felt like in shopping for barefoot shoes for the last 4 years, the toe box, the shape of this toe box has been crucially important to me, where a lot of these companies that are making barefoot shoes, and I'm all about their brand. I support you, I support your mission, but their execution is poor on the shape. That's one of the biggest ones, where this will be pointed or it'll be too narrow still. So I spent a ton of time on this. And when you're wearing this shoe, it doesn't look weird. That's part of the things people say, like, oh, they're sort of clown shoes. It's just like an odd shape. And that is the case for misshapen shoes when these companies aren't making that good of a shaped shoe.
Yeah.
And so I'm hoping that people will see this shape and be more excited about trying it.
Yeah. Well, like you and I talked about 2 weeks ago or whenever that was, I'm excited to try the shoes when they come in. You already sort of mentioned this, but I think it's awesome to connect with you at the time in Tolos's evolution that we are. So you are very much like in the birth of this, of this brand and of this business. When did you start this process of like the development of the business and of the shoe and starting all that? And then I believe you said that the launch officially is like about to happen in December. And as we're recording this, it's just about to be Halloween. So talk us through that process just a little bit.
Yeah, so that's been a fun part of it too, is this whole entrepreneurial thing and the whole logistics puzzle that I've been working on. So I've been thinking about it obviously since about 2017. And then I finished playing in 2019. I got a job selling software, and it was this corporate stiff job. And while I'm doing it, I just couldn't stop thinking about this idea, because I was still wearing these shoes. I was still working out hard, and it wasn't getting addressed. And pandemic happens, and I don't know really what the big push was. Actually, now that I sort of think of it, there was another company that popped up here in the Denver area, and they were trying to do sort of what I'm doing. And this is the summer of 2020. And I reached out to them because I was so excited and I really wanted to get on board one of these teams that's building this.
Yeah.
And I go and check out the product, and the founder didn't have any barefoot shoes, wasn't wearing barefoot shoes, wasn't an athlete. He just didn't really understand. He was coming from another, he was a designer at another footwear company. And it just blew me away that somebody was taking this on with so little connection to this market.
Yeah.
And so I was like, wow, I'm doing this because everybody's messing this up, in my opinion. So then serendipitously, I got connected with this woman who's starting a running shoe company. And she sort of explained the whole process to me. Basically, you design the shoe, you work with the designer, and you create a tech pack. And that's what you take to the factory. And it's basically a detailed PDF that they can make their plans to make the shoe in their factory. So she connected me with the designer, and I started working with him in November 2020. And I was still doing my other job. And so, and I wasn't even sure. I was like, am I really going to do this? But I paid him $10,000, and I was like, all right, this is a good enough start as it is. So yeah, we start working together, and it's just a lot of back and forth collaboration about, like, I recorded a 30-minute video with all my shoes, all my barefoot shoes, all my old regular shoes, being like, I love this feature about it. I really want to incorporate something like this. I want protection here. I love the sole of this. So yeah, that process ended up being a 9-month process. It could have gone faster, but it didn't. And ended in about August of 2021, and we had our finished tech pack. And in that time, the designer had introduced me to a couple sourcing agents. Basically, if you're going to work with a factory internationally, you have to have an agent that handles that relationship for you. So I found these two guys who used to work for Nike and Adidas. They're sort of industry veterans, and I just connected with them the best. They were sort of they were looking for startups and sort of smaller operations, and so it just worked.
Yeah.
So I started working with the factory in September of 2021, and basically then there's a phrase in shoemaking, the last comes first. And do you know what a last is?
I do, but I would love for you to explain what a last is in terms of shoes.
Yeah, so a last is basically a ceramic foot that determines the shape of the shoe. So when they're making the shoe, they surround all the material, the mesh with that. And so you have to be very specific with the shape of your last, because that's the way that the shoe is going to be shaped. So we took a couple months making that. They were sending the files over, and I was getting it 3D printed to save money and to cut some corners there wherever I could. And then once we had the last finished, that was probably December of 2021. So a little under a year ago. And then we started making the shoe, and it took us probably 8 to 10 iterations. And I'm extremely particular with a lot of the details. So I was sending back every single time I had pages of updates. So, and honestly, still, this is only version 1.0. There's a ton of updates that I want to make to it, but it's sort of our minimum viable product. And so we're ready to rock with it. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. And, what's kind of cool is to hear, I'm sure this happens with almost every business, but, this has been like a 5-year long process, right? Like, it's not like you just thought of this 1 week and then, oh, boom, here we are 6 months later, we're ready to roll. This takes a long time. I know you've spent hours and hours of time and energy, mental effort. You've probably spent tens of thousands of dollars, like trying to bring this to life. So I just think it's awesome to kind of hear that process or that timeline. And then, looking at your site, it looks like you can go on there and you can pre-order things. When do you expect, and I know, the world is crazy with shipping delays and all that stuff, but like, when do you expect that potential customers might actually be able to get these things on their feet?
Yeah. So the production is done with the shoes. That's a tough part about footwear is we placed the order in July, and the first order is for 2,000 pairs of shoes. And it basically took from early July until October 26th to make it. So
2 days ago. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And then it's going to take, with the supply chain, like you talked about, it's going to take roughly 2 months to get here. We were originally told 45 days. The original timeline was that our launch would be about December 1st, depending on, but we had some production delays. So it's looking probably closer to the new year, which isn't terrible. I just have to communicate that with the audience. But yeah, it looks like it's going to be right around the new year. We were hoping before the holidays.
Well, new year, new you, new pair of shoes for you guys. That's what I would suggest. That is always a nice present for myself, is buying and unwrapping a new pair of shoes, because, if you ask anyone in my family, that has always been a thing that I am very passionate about and that I have a lot of. I have so many shoes. And this has been a bit of a process for me as I make this, as I made this transition from traditional style footwear to more minimalist barefoot style footwear, where I've basically replaced every pair of shoe that I own and wear, but I still have most of the other ones, and they're just taking up space in my house. So, maybe I'm going to try and sell some of those to people who are not ready to jump on the bandwagon to this style yet, because there's definitely still a lot of life left in those shoes.
It's hard to let go of them.
Oh, it's so hard. And, quite frankly, I started this journey of barefoot shoes. I just saw a gentleman in our clinic yesterday wearing a pair of Lems shoes. And that was the very first barefoot style shoe that I ever wore, was the brand Lems.
They're great.
And this was in 2015, 16, one of those.
Good job.
And However, once that pair of shoes like started to wear out, I was wearing them all the time. I'm wearing out the bottom of it. The only reason that I didn't continue to wear those shoes was because of looks. And I went with other shoes that I thought looked cool. And I was like, wow, these are super stylish. I'm going to wear these other brands of shoes. And then about 3 years ago, I started to get back into it. So, 2020 ish, early 2020, as we're getting close to 2023. So
It's
yeah,
funny how that happens. It was similar with the New Balance Minimus that I had, and then and I just didn't even quite think of it. Like,
yep.
I made note of how comfortable it was on my feet, but
Yep.
just the style. So that gets back to our original point of, if we can lower as many barriers as possible, and the biggest barrier in the barefoot world right now is the aesthetics of it, and people are a little shy to admit that. Like, not people who aren't wearing barefoot shoes. People who aren't wearing barefoot shoes will gladly tell you how ugly they are.
Yeah.
But people within the community, like, I found that, like, reviewers and just fans of barefoot shoes that were talking about them, because they align with the mission of these companies so much, and they just want to see the movement progress and help more people.
Mm-hmm.
They give more allowance to companies for their looks. And so, like, reviewers are giving shoes like 9 out of 10, like 11 out of 10. They're so good. And I just sat there the whole time and I was like, it's okay to be honest. It's okay to say these shoes don't look good enough. Because if you don't, then there's not going to be a change, and we're not going to actually get good looking barefoot shoes.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I get that. You definitely, I like to tell people, even if it's not the one that you want at that time, feedback is a gift, right? Feedback allows you to either continue doing what's being positively reinforced, and to make constructive changes off of feedback that, suggests that, hey, there's some improvements to be made here. So feedback's a gift nonetheless. Speaking of
totally
mission,
agree.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. Can we get back to that? I wanted to make a note on the feedback.
Yeah, hell yeah.
So that's a big part of this too, is that I really want to make this an interactive community. And on my Instagram, I'm extremely active. I reply to every DM, and I'm really trying to make this a community. And that's one thing that I think a lot of it's just sort of the evolution of business now, where you really have to have this relationship with the customers. And it's not like, we make this great thing and here you have it. And I think that's what's going to give us a lot of success, is that people are going to feel a part of it, because the barefoot community, as much as they love these companies, they're getting frustrated with how rigid they are with some of these things, with the aesthetics, with some of the choices that they're making.
Mm-hmm.
And so if I can make this a company by the people, by the people, I think it will resonate with a lot more people too, and that just lowers another barrier.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the reasons why you and I probably connected so well, because obviously the practice and the business that I find myself in, it's a relationship business, right? Like, I get to spend tons of quality time with the people that I have the opportunity to work with. And notice just in the way that I said that, I didn't say with the patients or with the clients. I said with the people that I get to work with, because they're humans first and they're clients of ours, second or third or fourth, because they have a lot of other things that they do and they represent as well. But that's probably one of the reasons that we connect so well. One, we're both local here, so that's really cool. But two, we're working with humans, right? We're working with people. We want to build relationships with people, and then all have beneficial success as a result of that relationship. So I think that is awesome.
I think sorry to interrupt you.
No, you're good. You're good.
Which I think is the obvious evolution of healthcare, is that it's become this really, like, the interactions have become so transactional. And what's going to really help people, and what's going to win out in the future is actually caring about people, and in your case, actually taking the time to treat people and understanding why they're having these issues, why they're having these movement issues, how their sleep is, how their diet is, what their interaction with the during the day is like. Are they sitting all day? Yada yada. And for me to do a very similar thing of what kind of footwear are they wearing, what kind of job are they in, how can we get their whole life optimized rather than just being like here's a pill, this will fix it.
Yeah. That definitely isn't going to fix it. So going back, Evan, to, we started to talk about, a lot of times people will align with the mission or the vision of a particular organization, but then they sometimes still get frustrated with other things on the execution of how things happen. So, and I remember when we talked before, you had told me that part of the evolution of this company Tolos was, kind of an evolution that you had within yourself. And as you started to learn more about yourself and understand things, that's some of where this comes from. And I think we were sort of starting to touch around that, but would you sort of explain what I'm talking about there just a little bit?
Yes, absolutely. So yeah, that really is sort of the broader mission of Tolos is, as I started to think about these concepts and started to understand the missions behind these barefoot companies. So to take a step back, what a barefoot shoe is a wide toe box, being completely flat, zero drop is what it's called, and then thin and flexible. And what that does is puts you in your most anatomically correct position. And sort of mirroring nature is a huge theme of the brand. And as much as you can spend time in patterns that are natural, you are able to, it just helps you. I like to think of our bodies as instruments, really, rather than necessarily individuals. We are instruments of higher consciousness. I know that may sound crazy to some people, but the way that I like to think of it is, if you can tune your instrument, the better you can tune your instrument, the better it will be able to receive messages of genius, and the better that you will be able to transmit messages of genius. And the way to tune yourself is to align with these laws of nature. And so we are putting ourselves out of position at our base, and that puts us physically out of alignment. And so therefore, spiritually, mentally, we have a capped potential. And so if you truly want to maximize your human potential, you need to get yourself in physical alignment, mental alignment, spiritual alignment. And those aren't separate boxes. It's all encompassed under the laws of nature.
Yeah. I love that. And there is something to be said for being in proper alignment, whether we're talking about, like you just said, whether we're talking about physically or whether we're talking about your spiritual, emotional, mental health, all these other things. There's something to be said for being in alignment. And I think everybody, regardless of what your spiritual and emotional practices are and everything like that, I think everyone probably can feel the difference between when they are feeling in alignment with their self and their being, and when things feel out of whack, right? Like, I think we can tell the difference between those two things. Stress is obviously a easy word to relate to. You can tell when you are stressed and things are going haywire and it just seems like nothing is lining up, and when you are not stressed and things just seem to fall in place a lot better. There's reasons for those things. So no, I think that's awesome. And I love to hear just in your voice and your story, there's obviously a huge passion behind the project here. And, that's what oftentimes to me is like, I would never, you were saying a little bit ago, there's some other organizations where the CEO or like the head person in the organization isn't even like wearing these types of shoes. And then they're like trying to sell and promote these types of shoes. Like, I struggle. How could you promote something that like you don't do or invest in yourself? Unless there's like a really good reason for that. And In shoes, I think it's really hard to find find a good reason for that. But yeah, I would struggle to find myself promoting and repping and recommending things or products that I wouldn't do myself. So obviously that's not the case in your story. There's a huge passion behind this and a huge purpose behind this. And I think that is just huge fuel to the fire, to make this thing continue to go forward.
Yeah. I appreciate that you feel that in me. I am extremely passionate. My friends and family would say it probably borders on obsession. But I totally agree. And I'm doing my best to, when I see these brands, like when I saw that brand and just interacted with them, I'm doing my best to try to think long term with this and to not be impulsive with, because it's so frustrating for me when I see these companies who, I mean, basically, I can't think of many more reasons of doing this if you don't truly understand it, other than just seeing a hole in the market and trying to make a buck. And I can't be too hard on people. I mean, everybody's trying to get by and do their best, and a lot of these companies, in my opinion, they see between 70 and 90% of the sort of vision. And just as a person, I'm trying to not hold it against them that maybe they aren't looking where I'm looking. And realistically, it's a great opportunity for me to tap into something that I view it something deeper, in my opinion. So yeah, I'm trying to be patient, and rather than be frustrated with them, I'm just trying to take it as an opportunity for myself to help the world in that way.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I love that. I love it. And I'm super excited to try out the shoes. I still haven't decided though. Do I want white ones or do I want black ones? I don't know.
Yeah, in my opinion, you should go with the whites. I've never been a black shoe guy, and so yeah, the whites. That was really a part of it too. Is that in the athletic barefoot shoe space, there's, in my opinion, there's really only the Vivo Barefoot Primus Light shoe is the only good looking athletic shoe, and especially white shoe. There's like Zero makes a pretty good shoe. I don't like the look of it that much.
Yeah, that's all right. Everyone's got preferences, right?
Exactly. That, and that's part of it too, is I'm trying to bring an attitude of I'm trying to help you see this, and you can make your own decision. If you want, there's all these other brands out there.
Yep.
Please try them out, and especially before I launch, please get in there and find something you like. And if you like mine too, that's great. And I think a lot of people will like mine.
Yeah, exactly. And it's funny that you mentioned that specific shoe, because when I got back into the barefoot style footwear realm about 3 years ago, that Vivo Barefoot white Primus Light shoe is exactly the one that I bought. So, and I have worn those things so much, they're not white anymore. And,
Yeah.
I've worn them, I've lifted in them, I've worn them out and about around town. And I think it's interesting, or not interesting, I think it's relevant that you mentioned, like athleisure and stuff earlier in this episode, because the athleisure kind of look is taking over the world for sure. Like, and maybe there was some of that came with the pandemic, where we are doing things a lot more often remotely. We're having a lot of flexibility in our day, going from work to play to home life, back to work. And or maybe it's just because you and I find ourselves in a super active place like the Denver, Colorado area, and athleisure is a very popular style around here.
I totally agree. Yeah. And especially, like, I came from a hockey locker room where everybody was wearing Lululemon. And so that was a big thing, is I'm walking around in my Lulu joggers and all my athleisure. And I was like, I need a shoe that I can wear with these, because,
Yep.
and that sort of gets to a broader point where the people wearing athleisure are the athletes. and a lot of other people too, obviously. But that's one thing that I felt as I'm training, I'm in the off season, I'm in the gym training hard and trying to maximize my training and looking for every edge I can. I was looking at these companies thinking, you guys aren't even looking at athletes, and athletes are should be your core demographic, because there's a lot of stereotypes around athletes being sort of jocks and being sort of dumb and in a traditional sense. And I'm not gonna sit in front of you and tell you I'm any sort of genius. But what I have noticed is athletes, rather than having articulation skills, just because an athlete's genius comes out in a physical way.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like these barefoot companies are looking at athletes, and they're sort of thinking like, I don't know if they can really connect the dots with this, but really they should be looking at these companies saying, these are the people who are so connected with their bodies, and that is where their true genius is understanding mechanics, and how things truly feel, and being connected with their feet. And that's who we should really target. And so I just felt like there was never any sort of like messaging, or the products weren't really being pushed towards athletes.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how I think that we can help the most amount of people. Is I have obviously a ton of friends who are still playing hockey, and if I can get these in as many locker rooms as possible, then athletes start to see this and they start to feel the benefits, and they start to sort of preach and spread the message. And once athletes are wearing it, then that's when the movement really happens.
Yeah. I would agree with you. And I think, athletes like myself, I definitely appreciate the push this direction. And honestly, I don't think you have to look any further than, like so many people. I have a Netflix profile and account, and I recently watched the And One documentary, and One as a brand continued to like boom and grow because athletes, the people that the rest of the population was watching and paying attention to, started representing that brand, and it started to grow. And yeah, if you can get obviously sports are extremely popular, and there's a lot of other things that are popular too, and not everybody finds sports as their cup of tea. But the fact remains that sporting events, particularly the largely televised ones, think of like the Super Bowl, right? How many people watch that, right? Like if you can get things like this that could be so beneficial on a broad scale for people in front of a lot of people's eyeballs, that could only be beneficial, right? And I would love to see brands like this, or any of the other ones that you and I have already mentioned, like go try those too. But if we could get these types of things in front of people, as opposed to, chips in fast food restaurants and soda and and I'm trying not to name any particular brands, but like things that we all know are not beneficial for us, that are unhealthy for us, or instead of commercials for pain medications and topical things that, we just put on our body, or we put in our body, that like we know is not good for us. But they just have a lot of money behind those things. If we could get these types of things to replace some of those, I think that would be so cool. And I look forward to the day when hopefully that happens.
I totally agree. And honestly, I'm optimistic. I think that the tide is turning in that direction, where people are starting to sort of see the light a little bit. And so, I would love that if in 5 years I could be a Super Bowl ad, where a lot of people saw it and were positively impacted by it. And honestly, I think that that's going to be sort of the trend, where like right now there's the Hokas, the chunky like streetwear shoes,
thick shoes. Yeah,
exactly. And trends move. And so I think that the next trend is going to be minimalist shoes. And like listening to, it's a little intimidating, obviously, like going into the footwear industry and making a shoe. That was part of my hesitation with starting this is I was like, what am I thinking? Like, am I really going to compete with Nike? And like, how am I ever going to beat Nike, Adidas, Puma, New Balance? Like, what am I thinking? Who do I think I am? And but then listening to guys like Steven Sashin, I don't know if he said it on your podcast, but I've heard him talk about it on podcasts where these companies are actually going to be faced with a difficult decision where if the trend does move back towards a more minimalist shoe, they really have staked their livelihood on these other trends, and the consumers are going to lose trust in their message. So
yeah,
it really feels like there actually is a really amazing opportunity for companies who are going to champion this movement and really message the right way for them to overtake these companies. And
yeah, one of the things that I remember him saying when I had that conversation with him, and I think this is basically what you're getting at, and I think it's totally true, is that a lot of the individuals and CEOs and whatnot at those companies, the shoe developers and whatnot, they agree with a lot of the stuff that we're talking about. However, like you said, they've staked their claim and they have put their stake in the sand so firmly that like they're almost doubling down on like, we can't go back on that now, because we'd be admitting all of the stuff we've been preaching for the last many, many years is wrong, is incorrect. And like, we can't do that because it would just show that everything else is false. However, one of the things that as a consumer makes me really passionate to like stick behind a brand or a company or whatever, or just people in general, right, is the willingness to continue to adapt and to grow and to learn and have the freedom to change your mind or to change your opinion based off new information that has been presented to you. So like, I really respect when people will change their mind on something and admit, hey, I used to be really strongly this way, and now because of this information that I've learned, now I start to believe this other thing. That's how hopefully all of my colleagues in my profession, physical therapy, are. Like, the way that physical therapy was administered 30 years ago, my gosh, I hope I don't see any of that stuff in the clinic these days, because we have learned so much more information in healthcare and in science and about the body and how we can positively impact people, that what you were doing 20 years ago should be so far different than what's happening now. And people and companies that can adapt, admit mistakes, change their plans, change their trajectory based off new information, I really can get behind. So yeah,
I totally agree.
Yeah, you sort of saying that.
I totally agree. And that's a huge goal of mine, is to establish a culture within the company so that there is this level of communication, because that's really what it is a lack of communication, and then the brand just distancing from the truth. And you're 100% right. What an amazing thing when you see a company say, oh, this is what we've been doing, and we noticed this, we're listening to this, we're going to change and listen to you. It's like, you can't help but just love that brand and at least have respect for that brand. So
yep.
Yeah, I totally agree. But it's also too, like, it could just be a function of growth and like operations at scale. Like, it's very, very difficult to manage things. So I do have sympathy for those organizations too. Although if we were having a private conversation, I would let you know that I think a lot of those companies are acting cowardly with how they are unable to admit their wrongdoings and make changes.
Yeah.
And so I'm trying to act brave.
Yeah.
And inspire other people too.
I think that's an important piece. And yeah, by no means am I suggesting that for especially one of those massive organizations, making a radical change like that would be easy. It would be extremely hard. But I think it's worth taking the risk and taking the opportunity to make those changes. So, I mean, I think the only thing left to do is to get a pair of these Tolos shoes on our feet, everybody. So, Evan, as we wind down this episode, Where is the best place? You know, you talked about building a relationship with people, building a community. Where's the best place for people to find Tolos, whether that's on social media, website, whatever you want to share? How can people get in touch with you guys?
Yeah, perfect. So our website is Tolos, WEARTOLOS.com. And we're still building that out. We're a work in progress. I don't want to come to you and make you think that we're perfect from the start. So yeah, that's the website. You can pre-order now. Like we talked about earlier, the shoes should get here at the new year, new you. Probably the most fun place to interact with me is on Instagram. I'm super active on the Instagram at Tolos, TOLOS. Yeah, posting memes, just posting whatever I'm doing. And there's a lot of fun interaction on there. And then I have a little bit of a TikTok following at Evan A. Ritt. And that's sort of the trend now, is for founders of companies to sort of show stuff on the TikTok. So I'm going to build all that out too. But yeah, that's the main thing: the website, the Instagram, and then the TikTok.
Awesome. You guys. All those things will be linked in the show notes for this episode. So be sure to go check these guys out. When you get a pair of these shoes, be sure to put them on your feet, snap a picture, and tag Evan and tag Tolos on all of your social media platforms so that you can spread the message of getting yourself into some barefoot footwear. Again, for everybody that listened to this, thank you guys so much. What we sort of talked about before is building relationships, building a community, and that's exactly what we're trying to do on the code. So if you heard something in this that resonated with you, if you've heard other episodes, it would be so cool if you would go leave us a review, provide us with some feedback, tell us about things that you want to hear and learn about, and we'll make sure to make that happen. So go leave those reviews. Really, really appreciate it. Evan, thanks again so much for your time coming in and talking to me, man.
Hey, thanks for having me. Yeah, I got to get you shoes soon.
Sounds great. I'm looking forward to it. You guys, we'll catch you all next time on the code. Stay tuned for some more awesome conversations and have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.